Hi. Today I am going to present another grammar segment. I know that many of you will think that you don't need this, but please listen anyway because it will help. We're going to look at a couple of verb tenses today. These are the ones that people have been making mistakes with in speaking and writing. It's errors that Anglophones make for one reason and that Francophones make for another reason. So please have a watch. So, as I said, it's probably the most misused, well, I didn't say it, but I'm saying it now. It's the most misused verb tense in the English language, both for native English speakers and for people learning the language. So it's called the present perfect, and we're going to look at that and the present perfect progressive. So it is correct to say, I have taught the present perfect many times in my life. It is generally incorrect to say, I taught the present perfect many times in my life, unless, of course, you are dead or about to die. So we use it by conjugating the auxiliary have into the present, and then we use the past participle of the verb. So I have worked here for a long time. She has never taken the bus. Don't forget to conjugate your auxiliary. I have, you have, she has. And the question form, how long have you lived in Granby? I don't think there's a big struggle with that. There are two basic rules and several sub-rules, but the two basic rules kind of boil down to this. An action that occurred or did not occur at an unspecified moment in the past. If we think of the simple past, we say, I went there yesterday. It's a specified time in the past. Present perfect is an unspecified moment. I have written 2 books. When? I don't know. Or we have never gone to Indonesia. It means until now at some unspecified time in the past. We also use the present perfect to talk about having the experience of something. So we could say Patrick has traveled to Africa. We don't know when. It's an unspecified time, but he has the experience of being in Africa. Or we haven't seen that movie before. We don't have the experience of seeing that movie. Or Sonia has already taken the train alone. She has that experience. Oh, there she goes. We also use it to talk about change over time. So he has grown a beard since I last saw him. We see this little dude here with the beard. You look great. Have you lost weight? Which is a question, in fact, you should never ask anybody. And they have learned how to speak Spanish in the last year. So it's a change over time. And there is our little dude speaking some Spanish. We also use the present perfect to talk about accomplishments, again, but not at a specified time. I have finally finished correcting. That's true, I finished correcting this morning. Or Chris has graduated from university at last. It means we've been expecting it, but we didn't know when it would happen. Or they have arrived at their destination. There they go. Uncompleted actions you are expecting, again, at an unspecified time. I still haven't seen their new baby yet, so yet is my key word. Have you gone swimming at the new pool yet? Or I still haven't found what I'm looking for. So we're expecting these actions to happen. We also talk about, we also use the present perfect to talk about repeated actions at unspecified times. I have listened to his songs several times, but I don't know his name. Or she has watched that movie at least 10 times. It's incorrect in theory and practice to say she watched that movie at least 10 times, unless we know the time period. You could say she watched that movie at least 10 times yesterday, and that's correct. The second major rule for the present perfect is an action that began in the past and is still continuing. And these two rules are independent of each other. You don't need to have both of them to use the present perfect. So they have known each other since last summer. It means they met last summer. They still know each other. She has worked at Rona for 2 weeks. She started working there 2 weeks ago. She still works there. Or we haven't talked for 3 months. So 3 months ago would be what? January, December maybe? These are keywords for, since, and all that often indicate to us to use the present perfect. For we use with a time that can be measured for 2 weeks, for 3 days. I can use for with the simple past if I say I lived in Costa Rica for 3 years from 2003 to 2006. So that's a specified time in the past. I use since to describe when the action began, so since 2008 or since Saturday. and all meaning the complete time, all my life, all week, etc. These are the typical Anglophone errors that people make. I didn't see him yet. It's incorrect because yet is my keyword. You should say I haven't seen him yet. Or he has went there a lot of times. I hear that. It should be he has gone there a lot of times. So make sure you use the correct past participle. Or I seen that movie. I hear that incessantly. It's wrong, wrong, wrong. So I have seen that movie. So good grammar is like personal hygiene. You can ignore it if you want, but don't be surprised when people draw their conclusions. I thought that was an interesting tie-in to our conversation about, well, Calpurnia and using proper language. So we're going to do a little bit of comparison between the simple past and the present perfect. I saw him last week. That's correct because it's a specified time in the past. I have seen him recently. Recently indicates at some unspecified time in the past. I traveled a lot in my life. It means you're finished traveling. You don't think you're going to go anywhere else. But if I say I have traveled a lot in my life, it means it's very possible and probable that you will travel again. Or she didn't have a good time at the party. The party's finished. But she hasn't had a great year. It means the year is still continuing. Maybe things will improve. We can also compare French. These are the errors that people struggle with when translating, for example, from French into English. If I say this sentence, which I'm not going to say because people laugh at my accent, yada, 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 the correct structure is I have worked here for 2 years, or I have been working here for 2 years. We'll tackle that in a second. Or I haven't seen him since last week. So I understand why people make mistakes. Here we've got the present tense in French, but in English I need the present perfect because I have the idea that the action started in the past and it's still continuing. And here I have the passé composé in French, and so it almost looks the exact same thing. And in fact, if French still used the simple past like English does, then anyway, that's a discussion for another day. So the general trick is that we use the present perfect to introduce a subject, but when we ask specific questions about the past, we use the simple past. So I have never gone to Japan, but I have traveled extensively in South America. And then I give specific details. In 2003, I spent a month in Peru. And then in 2004, my friend and I camped for a week on the beach, yada, yada, yada. Present perfect progressive, it's worth talking about at the same time. It's an action in progress from a past time until the present. So I have been working here for 20 years. It's very similar in that case to the present perfect. And it emphasizes the duration of the activity. So she's been sleeping since Sunday morning. I haven't really spoken to you guys about this all semester, but because I don't think I really need to. But there are certain verbs that can't be used in what we call a progressive form, meaning the be plus ing. So verbs of heart and head, meaning to remember. I can't say I have been remembering because remember happens in your head. If it takes place in your heart or in your head, you cannot put an ing on it. There are some exceptions like think or yeah, anyway, there are a lot of exceptions. You can ask me about them in class next week. Oops. There are some nuances between the present perfect and present perfect progressive. The present perfect often talks about a completed action and this demonstrates a desired effect. So I have finished my project at last. The present perfect progressive, or the PPP, it means the action is still continuing and we often see an unwanted side effect. So why is there dirt on the floor? Oh, because I've been working. It means you're not finished working yet. More nuances. The present perfect means to differentiate the two, we could say it means since the last time she hasn't gone on vacation in 5 years. It means it has been 5 years since she has taken a vacation. We don't really use a structure like that in English. It sounds weird. And PPP means since the beginning. So she has been traveling for 4 days only and already wants to go home. It means ever since she put the backpack on her back, she has not enjoyed a moment of her trip and she wants to go home. So it's been 4 days of misery. We also use the present perfect progressive when the results are still visible, but the action has recently finished. So it's very similar to the unwanted side effect. She is sweating because she has been exercising, or she is crying or she has been crying because, or she's crying because she has been cutting onions. That often happens to me. Sometimes they're the same thing, so the present perfect and present perfect progressive, in particular with these four verbs, teach, work, live, and study, I can use them almost interchangeably. I've worked here for 20 years. I've been working here for 20 years. She's taught skating since she was 16. She has been teaching skating since she was 16. Sometimes they're not the same, and they're not always interchangeable. I have known them for 5 months. I can't say I have been knowing them for 5 months. Why? Or we have seen Harry Potter 6 times. I can't say we have been seeing Harry Potter 6 times. One thing I will tell you, especially for the non-Anglophones in the class, is that given the choice between the two, Anglophones, we don't even think about it. We take the present perfect progressive because it's just easier to conjugate. We don't have to think, oh, is there an irregular past participle? So the difference between I have drunk tea all day or I have been drinking tea all day, I'm going to say I've been drinking tea all day because the other one just sounds weird. So there, I put an exercise on Moodle for you, and but if you want extra help, please go to englishpage.com on the verb page. There are tons of exercises and the answers are there. Or this is another one that, well, I didn't even check this link actually, but you can just look on the internet. There are really tons of exercises to help you. So thank you for listening. I hope it wasn't too painful. And I'll see you soon. Ciao. Stop.